Welcome everyone to Wall Street, New York for the World Rapid Championships 2024. We have Hikaru Nakamura on our screen, one of the finest speed players in the world, taking on Brandon Jacobson, a young talented American born in 2003. Brandon became quite famous recently when he played A4 and Rook A3 in a match against Daniel Naroditsky. Later, his chess.com account was banned and there were a lot of things that happened around it. Even Magnus played that opening later on. But now it's over the board. Let's see how this one goes. Brandon takes his time for the first move, thinks a bit and goes A4. Wow! He plays this against Hikaru and Hikaru pushes his pawn to E5. E4 played. Well, A4 is not particularly a bad move, but still to do this against Hikaru in over the board game definitely requires some courage. Now knight jumps to D5, attacking the bishop here, so Hikaru simply chops it off. A good move, e takes D5, and he quickly castles it out. Black's position looks very fine out of the opening, but Brandon is like, it's a fresh position. I like it. Bishop to C4. And Hikaru pushes his pawn to D6. So he has this bishop now opening up. Brandon develops his knight to E2. The knight comes to D7 and later Hikaru can play F5, but D4 striking in the center and C5 played here by Hikaru. A little bit of a curious move there. White simply castles it out and the queen comes to C7, putting pressure on the bishop on C4. He takes on C5 and I guess Hikaru will take with the knight. Knight takes C5 is on the board. He pushes A5, gaining space on the queen side. And Hikaru plays bishop G4, pinning here and preparing F5. F3 played here, pushing the bishop away. The bishop comes back to D7. And Brandon brings his bishop to E3. So I think Black's position is completely fine, but this last move, B5, isn't particularly the best if he brings his bishop back to A2, which is what Brandon does. A good decision here, because if you take here, there is bishop C5, DC5, D6, followed by bishop F7, and the queen would be hanging. So rook C8 played, and now queen comes up to D2. Hikaru plays his rook to E8, and the game is slowly building up. He pushes B4, the knight goes back to A6. The B5 pawn is slightly weak and he defends C3. He maybe wants to go C4 at the right moment. Queen B7 played. And now C4 is on the board. What a move there. He takes and Brandon takes with the bishop. He goes back with the knight. You can't take the pawn here because of rook B1 pinning. So he goes back and now A6 played, pushing the queen. Queen goes back and the knight comes to C3. So white slowly and steadily gaining space. Hikaru playing within his position. Knight jumping into E4. And now what's next? Knight B6 seems like a natural move here. Hitting the bishop and the pawn. You can also think about F5. But then there's this very tricky move, threatening then D6 if the knight is taken. So he goes knight B6. Bishop comes back to F1. And Hikaru plays his rook to D8. Let's see what Brandon now does. He pushes his pawn to B5. Who knows, maybe he just wants to sacrifice an exchange there by rook C6. F5 is on the board. And this time there are no sacrifices. But he goes back, knight to C3. Bishop comes to F6. But now this knight can later on go knight A2, knight B4 to C6. But he goes knight A4. He offers the trade of knights. And maybe first rook c1, because you can't take with the rook. The knight is hanging here. So you have to take it back with the queen. Hikaru is taking his time here. He has 3 minutes 23 seconds. He takes on c1, good move, queen c1, and also plays rook c8, a good move. And Brandon goes queen d2. The bishop comes back. So Hikaru wants to take the knight and then play bishop b6 and trade off his bad bishop. Queen f2, a fantastic move, putting pressure here on this diagonal. Takes on a4, rook takes, and now rook c7 played. But that is tremendously passive. If rook b4 and b6 coming in would be excellent for white. Let's see what Brandon does here. He goes rook b4. He finds it. He's playing some amazing chess. f4 played to get the bishop out of this diagonal, but he sacks the bishop. What? b6 played. Amazing. Hikaru is nodding there, but his position looks very suspect now. Brandon has just given up a piece, but his queenside pawns look amazing. There's no easy way to break through. But you can realize that it's not so simple for even black to play here. Bishop d3, threatening maybe to sack here. King comes to f7, good move. And he goes king f1. Okay. But the bishop comes to a5, hitting the rook. The rook moves back. And now the bishop comes back to d8. Brandon plays his queen to b3. It's pretty clear that white has amazing compensation. And I like how Brandon's doing things, going about it. He's not hurrying much. Bishop d2 attacks the rook. The rook has to be moved. But where exactly should you move the rook? Goes rook c6. Wow, giving up another exchange there. Bishop e3 played. And now you don't want to move the rook there, so queen b4, attacking this pawn on d6. Hikaru plays bishop c5. And what is Brandon going to do here? There's an amazing exchange sacrifice where you take with your rook the bishop. And he doesn't do it. He goes queen a5, king e7 played. And now queen jumps into c7, offering a trade of queens so that you can make a queen very quickly. And Hikaru there doesn't really find a move. He hardly has a move there. He goes rook a8. But that is game over. He's going to simply take. Oh, he doesn't take the rook even. Oh, and he sacrifices on c5. What a finish there. Hikaru gets up. Look at Brandon there. He's so happy with this win, because if the rook was taken, the two pawns were so strong. a7 was coming in, and Hikaru, nice of him to analyze the game, but he was completely blown off the board by some phenomenal play by Brandon Jacobson. Well, one cannot really decode his expressions here. Is he thinking about the game? Is he thinking about the moves? Is he just happy at having beaten Hikaru with one a4? You never know. But all that we know is that these are some moments which are very special for Brandon, and I'm sure that he's going to look back at this game feeling quite proud of himself for having beaten Hikaru by sacrificing so much material. And that a pawn which he moved right at the start of the board is the one that has given him the victory. A and B pawns reached all the way to the end of the board. He arranges all the pieces, and this will definitely be a memorable game in Brandon Jacobson's life.